This is my 2019 Nissan GTR. This is possible without your guys' support. This is my fucking car, man. Alright guys, we are doing a long-awaited review. I've had the car now for October, December, January, March, April through May. 6 months. So this is my 6-month ownership official review of the 2019 Nissan GTR. Since owning it, I believe I'm put on close to 7,000 miles on it over these last 6 months. So you could say that I don't drive it too much, but I still daily drive it. It is my only car, so it is my daily driver. Let's go around just to walk around of what's on the exterior of the car before I go through what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and the overall driving experience overall. So first things first, the car came in a pearl white tri-coat. It is now wrapped in 3M Gloss Storm Gray, so this is the closest thing that I could find to Porsche's Chop Gray. On the front here, we do have an APR carbon front splitter, as well as the entire, this used to be a metallic dark gray. So all of this is wrapped in black, including this little bottom piece of the bumper. Same thing with the side skirts and the rear diffuser. Also, those are actually painted in gloss black instead of the metallic. It really didn't make much sense for me to have like a gray on a gray, so I'd rather go gray on black. Same with the roof. The roof is now wrapped in black, as well as the mirrors are done in black. These vents are done in black, and the wheels are also being coated in gloss black. So everything else was like a dark metallic gray. I personally like having a lot of contrast with every single car that I've done. The Mustang was black and orange, the Subaru was black and white, and then the brakes were actually painted a lime green, Verde Ethica is what I like to call it, right there. So moving around to the back, exterior wise, we do have a carbon fiber duckbill trunk. The portion of this rear bumper is wrapped in gloss black. The car's really dirty right now, so I apologize for that. And then I do have an Army Tricks catback exhaust, which does sound phenomenal. So let's do a few quick sound clips of this right now. So I do have variability with the exhaust as well. It does have a valve system, so I can open, close the valves, and I can also, when it's in the actual Army Tricks mode, essentially Army Tricks mode allows it to be open under throttle and then closed when it's not above a certain RPM, and I believe the RPM is about 3,500 4K. But right now I'm gonna open up the hood and show you guys what's under the hood. So under the engine, we have a twin turbo V6. It's my first twin turbo car. It makes incredible noises. Hopefully you'll be able to pick those up inside the cabin as we're doing our little drive. But the only modifications that I have done to the engine are a MA Performance intake. So it's interesting because with the twin turbo car, there's 2 intakes that go onto it. So along with the intakes, along with the catback exhaust and a tune from The Shop in Houston, is what we call The Shop, it is now pushing around 595 wheel horsepower. Not sure what the torque is at, but considering from how this car performed stock compared to with the tune, it's night and day, like night and day. And that's what I'm gonna get into as we go through the driving review when we get towards that. But I mean, it's actually quite literally insane how much power this thing has. It went from, steady launches, all 4 wheels gripping, to launches with a little bit of swerving, and that just goes to attest to how powerful that tune made it. I think with these cars you can do so many things with not a lot of work, and I know a lot of people are pushing 700 wheel horsepower full bolt-ons on this car, but I didn't really find it necessary to go past the intakes, the catback, and the tune, because it's plenty more than enough power for me. So that is what's under the engine bay. Let's go take a look at the interior of the car. Interior of the car, it is pretty fundamental, if I'm being honest. When you talk about the price point, about Around 90 grand is what I paid for this car. You'd expect the interior to be maybe a little more luxurious, but like I said, I can't complain. If you're getting into a GTR, you're not getting into it for its luxury feel. You're getting into this car because it's a hell of a lot of fucking power for the money, and it's going to compete with supercars for its price point. I make the argument that it is a supercar. I know a lot of people don't like to say that because it's technically not exotic, but considering the power it's putting down, it's in that range, okay? So as far as the interior goes, pretty basic overall. We do have an Alcantara here on the seat, as long as perforated leather and silver stitching. The center console portion here is filled with dry carbon fiber. The infotainment system doesn't have Apple CarPlay or anything like that. It's just simple. Literally, this entire interior is simple, and that's why I come to appreciate it, because every time I'm in this cockpit, I feel very comfortable. The seats are very comfortable. I've done 4-hour plus long road trips in this car. It's been totally fine, and it's not too fancy. There's not a lot of buttons to click. So at the end of the day, it's what I'm used to. I've been in a Subaru, I've been in a Mustang, and now I'm in a GTR. It's not anything that's too fancy. It's not a Mercedes, it's not a Porsche, it's not a Lamborghini, by any that matter, but it has cup holders. There's 3 of them, actually. I have brought people in the back seats. Now, each individual that I did take in the back seat was under 5'7", so, but you can fit people back there. So this makes it a very, very practical car. And don't even get me started. Hold on, let me. Look at this. Look at this. Groceries. Groceries. I can fit groceries in it. Launch control, 3, 2, 1. Now that we've launched the car twice, you've heard the exhaust, you've seen what the exterior is, you know what modifications are done to it. Oh, I didn't mention that the thing is lowered on Swift Spec R lowering springs. That's where I want to start, actually. Is one thing that I actually, I know it sounds weird to dislike, but I've had a better No, I don't know if I've had a better handling car, but I guess, like, I expected the GTR to handle a bit better than it does. I will say, on the stock suspension, the ride was much smoother than it was lowered. And I will say, on the stock power, it handled much better. Because when this thing is getting up to a higher speed around corners, it feels a little bit wobbly. And part of that is just due to the power increase, you know? The suspension alone, it's very tight. You feel every bump. It's pretty loud. But it can also be kind of rattly, you know, like one thing that I've noticed while driving is that, like, when you go over bumps, it almost feels like the car's gonna break. And I've driven a McLaren 570S, very similar feel, very, very similar feel, but a McLaren is in a realm of its own. That thing is like a dedicated track car. So this being a GTR, some argue, yes, this is a track-focused car. It's a speed-driven and focused car. But being this heavy of a car compared to a 570S, you expect it to be a little bit more giving from a suspension standpoint. Cornering around corners, like I said, I mean, like, going through power, it does sway a little bit. I mean, at times I do feel scared shitless of the car itself when I'm launching it, when I'm going straight, when I'm going around corners and on the throttle. It scares me. Now, that's a very exhilarating feeling, which I really wouldn't trade for anything in the world. But I've never driven a Porsche. I've never driven a Lamborghini, but I would assume that, like, something like a GT3 RS, which is literally a street legal track car, same with the 570S, which I've driven, very, very planted to the ground, and you very much trust the car. When I'm going around corners in this car, I can't really say that I trust it. Now, in my opinion, the GTR really isn't made for the same reasons the 570S or a GT3 RS are made for. A lot of people take these cars, turn them into 1,000 horsepower drag cars, and that's how they drive them, or they daily drive them like I am right now. So it comes down to preference, but I wanted to go over the handling first, because it's really, I think, the car's downfall, in my opinion. From a speed standpoint, straight line, this thing is absolutely phenomenal. Like, phenomenal. The tune itself is, I mean, if you add up intake, which was like $400. The exhaust was, I mean, I spent over $4 grand on the exhaust. You can go much cheaper. You can just get a mid-pipe a wide pipe rather than a full catback system. And the tune alone was $2,000. For another 100 extra wheel horsepower, 100% worth it. I mean, this makes this car quite literally insane to drive. Not that it was already insane stock, but since the platform is so easy to push its power, like, why not push its power? Like I said, you can get these up to 700 plus wheel horsepower just in full bolt-ons in the E85. Other than that, the experience within the cabin itself, again, like the infotainment system, everything's very basic. Everything is within reach as far as controls go. I do have controls on the steering wheel, which I really do like the steering wheel. I do wish it was a flat bottom steering wheel, which I do like. Maybe Alcantara, carbon fiber, etc. But, I mean, it's a Nissan, right? At the end of the day, this is not a luxury car. I don't think there's even a luxury tax that you pay on the GTR itself. So, for what it is, it's a very speed, performance, and power-driven vehicle, which makes it so much fun to drive. But also, as far as a daily driver, it's nice and roomy. I'm not really feeling claustrophobic within this cabin whatsoever. Other than that, as far as the launch goes, I'm pretty sure 0 to 60 is right around 3 seconds, maybe slightly under, which is mind-blowing. As far as being on the road itself, it's like not often that I do get to use its full power, but when I do, it's a great time. It's a great time, and we'll go around this corner right now. I want to go over the transmission next here. Switching into manual mode. A little first gear pull. It gets up and goes, and the sound that it makes out of the twin turbo V6, it just sounds like a race car. It literally sounds like a race car. The turbo noises are pretty insane. If I downshift a few times and like let off, you can hear the turbo itself kind of spool up. There are no blow-off valves on this. I know I can get some installed, but the turbo noises with the intake are pretty significant, especially when you're driving slower. But no matter what gear you're in, the downshifts are pretty quick. Upshifts are also very quick. So literally nothing bad to say about the transmission at all. I've never driven a transmission that's been better than this. I don't have the privilege of driving a bunch of different supercars for that matter. But it is a 6-speed transmission, dual clutch. As far as pushing the manual, all I need to do is press the gear shift to the right and then use these paddle shifters here, which are this nice like black chrome feel to them. But the transmission is really good. One thing is that it is a loud transmission. It's what GTRs are known for, is they're kind of clunky and they're kind of loud. Especially when you're driving slower speeds, you can kind of hear it clunk around a little bit, which does kind of make the car feel cheap. I will not lie to you. At times, this car does feel very cheap with the suspension, with the noises of the transmission. But again, if you're getting into a GTR, that's not something that you really should be worried about if this is the kind of car that you want to buy. It's kind of in a class of its own when you think about how much power it has for how much money they saved actually building this car in general. But nothing really bad to say about the transmission. Could it be an 8-speed? Could it be a 10-speed? Absolutely. I've never driven an 8-speed or a 10-speed, so I can't really vouch or attest for those kind of transmissions. But they've kept the transmission, they've kept the powertrain the same here since this car came out in 2010. And it's now in 2019. The only thing that's really different is the overall facelift and a few interior changes. So I could say that the GTR is, in for a refresher here, as far as styling upgrade, powertrain upgrade. So I'm curious what they end up doing with it. But this car stayed the same for a reason. Once they built the car, it was pretty much something that was pretty mind-blowing to the market itself when it came out. And they haven't changed it. It's a legendary car. It's always been a car that's been around, and it will always go down as a legend. It's not a car that I feel depreciates very quickly for that reason. It still does depreciate. It's not like something like a 2016 RS, which depreciates like 10K over the course of like 6 years or so. But other than that, it's the sound of this car. I feel like I'm talking about things that I don't like about it, as much as I do things that I like about it. But overall, the experience is, I feel like it is still a very, very comfortable car for what it is. I've driven an Audi R8 as well. Being behind the wheel of that car, I felt like it was much more sketch, like a little bit more loose. Since this thing is a heavier car, it feels very grounded. It feels very grounded. Now, like I said, when you're going around corners, it doesn't feel as light and as nimble, but as far as going fast in a straight line, yes, it does scare the shit out of you, but you also still feel very much in control. When you're north of 100 miles an hour, it doesn't actually really feel like you're north of 100 miles an hour. But other than that, really nothing but good things to say about how the car drives. One thing I wanted to go over is these brakes. These brakes are carbon ceramic brakes. It's the first time having them. And when we're talking about a car that has a top speed of over 180 mile an hour, you need to be able to stop, and you need to be able to stop fast. And this car, I do stop very fast in. As far as visibility goes, honestly, it's great. It really is. One thing is that, like, the blind spot's a little difficult, because when I go into my blind spot, I have a big pillar here, so I really had to double check and be careful when it comes to a blind spot. And it's a passenger sitting in the other car, it's kind of hard to, I'm looking at the rear windshield to see who's coming here. But I've definitely driven cars with worse visibility. I would say that my Mustang was actually a little bit worse than this from a visibility standpoint, but right now I'm in R mode, and this is just the automatic mode, and the shifts are very on cue. Obviously I've driven automatic cars before, but it's almost as if this transmission in the car itself is it's very much machined. And the way I explain that is, I don't necessarily had to be in manual mode all the time for the car to do what I want it to do. And I think that speaks volumes to how well the transmission and how well the car knows itself and is built. I think that when you move into 8-speed and 10-speed, for example, you could be shifting too quickly. It could be like upshifting, downshifting, not really when you want to, but as I'm just pulling away on the road right there, it does exactly what I wanted to do. When I'm getting on the throttle, I don't even have to downshift. It doesn't take too long for it to downshift in the third, knowing that, hey, I'm trying to get on the throttle. So if I'm really trying to, like, mess around, have fun, I am going to be in manual mode, but I don't actually use it that often, because automatic really knows what it's doing. And right now, as you see down here, I am in R mode. Okay, so R mode, I can control transmission, handling, powertrain. So if I'm going down here to normal mode, there's also comfort mode and safe mode as far as these modes go. But now that I'm just in the regular mode, the RPM level in 6th gear at 54 miles an hour is right under 2K. So you can see the car is a little bit quieter now. I am usually in its normal mode most of the time. For me, there's not really a reason for it to be in R all the time. The car still makes plenty of power in its normal mode. You could say that I'm a boring driver, but at the end of the day, I don't necessarily get the chance to use all of the car's power. Plus, one thing I noticed is that the turbo noises and the spooling noises are actually a little bit louder when I'm in the normal mode itself, because the shifts are a little bit less aggressive, so I can kind of get on the throttle, build up boost, and let off, and it makes pretty cool noises. So let's see if I can get one for the camera to pick up or not. So it makes a little spool noise at when I kind of let off throttle. So the normal mode is usually what I stay in. At the end of the day, yes, it does pull harder in R. The car does get a little bit louder in R, but I stay in this mode most of the time. As far as the Valtronic exhaust goes as well, this is something I want to touch on, because I think a lot of people are attracted to the thought of a valve. Now, if this car did have downpipes, I definitely would use the valves more often and pretty much have them on the Army-Trix mode, which is closed in low RPM and loud in high RPM. But since it's just the catback, I have them open all the time. Now, yes, there is a little bit of a drone there, It doesn't really bother me when I'm just city driving, highway driving, but if I'm going on a road trip, I'm going to use the valve and pretty much close them for the entire trip. There's no roid noise at all, and when they're closed, you really can't hear anything. In stock, this car sounds like a goddamn vacuum cleaner. Like it literally sounds like a vacuum cleaner. So first one I recommend for your GTR is either wide pipe, catback, or down pipes. But right now I actually don't have the Army-Trix module plugged in, so I can't actually go through the button or my phone app and actually open and close the valves right now. And the reason I unplugged it is because every time you get in the car and start up the car, it's actually stuck on the Army-Trix mode, meaning that it's off in the low RPM and loud in the high RPM. So when you cold start it, the valves are actually closed, so you don't get the nice and loud cold start, which I like to have. Sorry, neighbor. So I actually unplugged it, and with that in mind, it's like, are the valves actually worth it? I feel like if you're city driving and you're not really doing road trips, I don't think you need a valved exhaust. I thought it was super cool, but honestly, road tripping to Dallas and back and having the controllability of the valves was amazing. So that's just one thing to consider, is you won't be using them every single day. If I had downpipes, like I said again, I wouldn't want the car to be that fucking open and loud all the time, so I would use them. But that's as far as what I got. It's in a league of its own as far as sounds of cars that I've driven coming from a V8 Mustang. It's not as deep as a tone, but I will say with the exhaust, it does make the note of the twin turbo V6 actually sound a little bit deeper. Overall, like interior wise, something that is phenomenal is it's the best sound system I've ever heard in an entire car in my entire life. This full Bose stereo system is 10 out of freaking 10. The bass, everything, the adjustability, everything, you can customize it how you want it. It's incredible. So we're gonna play this song right now. Probably can't pick it up through the camera, but it gets really loud, and I'm pretty sure there's Bose subs that are behind me. I'm not sure if those are Bose subs or not, but that definitely enhances the driving experience for me. 10 out of 10. Like I said, this is an amazing daily driver. As far as daily driving miles and miles per gallon goes, I think I get about 220 miles before I had to fill it up, full tank wise. So not the best, but that's not obviously what I'm buying this car for. If you're watching this video and you're expecting this car to have good gas mileage, you're watching the wrong video. Other than that, the interior feel, all of this is like nice and leather. There's no plastic, all of this is nice and leather. So I was talking about how this was not like an exotic, like German engineering like interior, but like Nissan put together a very, very high quality interior here. I have nothing bad to say. Nothing here is cheap. There's nothing plasticky, nothing rattly. There's no interior rattling in here like at all. So that's nice. I mean, obviously paying the $90,000 plus that you're going to get into one of these cars, you're going to expect it to have a high level interior. Other than that, I got really nothing else that I can say about this car. Nothing but good things to say about this car. It's an absolute dream to drive it every single day. I get to drive this car every single day. As you look forward to the little grocery run trips, the gas station trips, everything. You get a lot of thumbs ups in this car, especially from younger people. That's one thing I wanted to mention. When you're in a GTR, it is a younger crowd pleaser in that sense. I mean, I'm only 22 years old. I literally am driving this car because I idled the car in Fast and Furious, and that's enough of its own. But I definitely get a lot of attention in this car. It's super cool. And the people that I've talked to about the car are all like pretty much younger. Like, hey, what do you do? Like, what do you do to this car? Like, I can't believe you drive this kind of thing. It's pretty cool feeling. But that's exactly what makes this like a great daily, in my opinion. It's not something that is so fancy where you're like afraid to drive it. At the end of the day, I'm not afraid to put myself up against a race against the Lamborghini. And I will say I've not really gotten tested for any races while in this car. I did in the Mustang a lot more. I think that's kind of just an American muscle thing. But other than that, highway driving right now, pretty comfortable. As you can probably hear, there is a drone. I am having to talk louder. I'm very used to it. The Mustang bikes both droned worse than this. Plus, I can close the valves if I want to. But other than that, that's really all I got for this car. Please, if you guys have any questions for me, please feel free to drop them down below in the comments. I hope this was a good review for you. I'm not a professional car reviewer. I am a fitness coach. So I'm giving you guys all that I got with all the knowledge that I have and the interest that I have in cars themselves. So make sure you drop a like in this video. With that said, I'll see you in the next one.